Okay, guys, here we go. So we are ready to, yay, practice our stippling. So we are going to, this is one of my examples. We are going to basically make a gradient and talk about how to hold your pen and then eventually how to apply it to your drawing. Okay, so on your sketchbook, find a fresh page. And I like to hold my pen kind of loose. And you know how you kind of would hold a pencil sort of on an angle? Well, you're going to actually turn your wrist so it's almost flat against your sketchbook so that your pen can be more upright, up and down. Because the fine tip Sharpie is super, super, super kind of sensitive and flat. And if you go on an angle, you're going to end up bending the tip of the Sharpie. Okay, so when I start, I want to just start with a grouping of dots. I like to start with the dark areas because you can really never make black blacker, right? You can add as many dots as you want to make it as dark as possible. But if you start with light and you put too much in there, you can't really go back. There is no erasing a Sharpie, and we don't use whiteout in my classroom. That's not even, those words are sacrilegious in my class. So no whiteout. So we are just going to dot, dot, dot away. And I'm making, it's going to take a little while, but I can go pretty fast. So I'm not making big, giant, swingy movements. I'm doing small tapping. Okay. So if I'm going to show you over here, not boom, 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 not a lot of wrist action. It should be just kind of a subtle up and down. So I'm almost going to make kind of like a block to start with, but we eventually want it to be a smooth transition and not stripy at all. So now as I am ready to start making a lighter value, I'll start kind of pulling down, adding less dots, and spreading them out more. Because the idea is that when you kind of squint your eyes, the more dots closer together are going to make a dark value. The fewer the dots farther apart are going to make a light value. All right, so the one on the right is definitely incomplete. One on the left is meh, most of the way complete. And these are, again, just practice. But to kind of make it better, I'd want to find the area that looks a little thin and make that a little darker so there is a stronger, smooth transition from that dark to light. And like I said, you can't really make dark darker. So I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit more because it's not going to hurt anything. And then I'm going to go and kind of get a little slower and a little bit more sporadic and careful as far as like where I'm placing them. And now you can see that kind of smoother transition from dark to light. So the reason why we want to practice a gradient is because if you look at my lion, I have plenty of areas that show a like slow dark to light transition. And I guarantee it's going to be on yours as well. Even if you chose the zebra, which has obviously some distinct black and white stripes, I guarantee there's some shadow areas. So it's not necessarily just about the pattern that's on your animal, but whether there is a shaded area where you need to transition from that dark shadow to that light shadow. So you might not be going from black to white, but you might be going from, middle gray to white. Okay. And just understanding that that's how you're going to get it is more dots closer together, dark value, fewer dots, space farther apart, lighter value. Okay. So where does this all come from? Why do we do stippling? That's what this method is called. Why do we do this? Well, it kind of actually comes from something called Pointillism. Okay, and you might recognize this painting if you've ever been to the Art Institute of Chicago. It hangs there. It's one of my favorite paintings of all time by George Seurat. It also is actually the inspiration for a musical called Sunday in the Park with George. So just a little fun fact. But the cool part about this painting and the website for the Art Institute is it allows you to zoom in. Now, I do have the spinny circle of death, so I'm going to hopefully be able to zoom in and show you a little bit more. But this painting was entirely made of small marks with a paintbrush. Okay, so small colored marks. Now we're doing black and white, but the idea is that he used just dots close together to create these values and colors. Okay, now that it's letting me zoom in, I'm going to go ahead and zoom in on the painting and let's see how close we can get. And you can start to see the dots get closer and closer. So this is as close as we can get, but you can kind of see that there are like these darker spots in the middle of that lighter green grass area that I've never noticed. And, you know, there's directionality to some of the marks in the blue skirt over on this side, on the right side. So it's just very interesting that his technique is not done by many, because let's be honest, it's very time consuming, but it's so interesting to go really close to that painting and then to back up and see it from afar. It's a pretty big painting. I want to say it's about 10 to 12 feet wide and at least 6 or 7 feet tall. And it's at the Art Institute on a permanent display. So I hope that some of you will find it someday and remember this project. Okay, so what are we doing? How are we applying our practice pen technique to our animals or creatures or whatever you decided to do? Okay, so we are going to take our pen and you're going to take a deep breath first, because remember, we can't erase it. It's Sharpie. And we're going to start with our darkest areas, because remember that you can't really make a mistake in the darkest areas as long as you're putting it in the right place. Because you can really just make dark darker. And you do need to be careful of that. There are some areas, especially like in the nose area for my lion, that are kind of like a dark gray instead of a black. So I need to know that difference. So I'm actually probably going to start with my nose, and that's where I'm going to show you my example. And I'm going to look for that absolute darkest dark area. So with your picture, you can go ahead and use Command plus that we learned in Photoshop and zoom in on the area that you're working in. Your grid's going to stay. So you're going to be able to see that grid in the same size that you see it on here. So you can still focus on where the darkest dark areas are. I'm glad I zoomed in, because do you see that little like white skinny highlight there? I want to make sure that I don't mess that up. And I'm even going to go back with my eraser and clean up that shape of my nostril a little bit on my lion's nose. So I'm going to go ahead and start right where that white spot is. I'm not doing the white, I'm doing the black that's right next to it. And you're going to say, Mrs. Vance, why can't I just color in the dark black areas? You can just see a difference. It's very apparent if you shade in any spot. So I'm just going to make kind of a clean outline using the dots. And that way, when I go to do, I'm going to leave just this skinny section right there for that nose highlight. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you guys can see. There we go. And that way it's not forgotten. So the darkest areas are obviously going to take you the longest because it requires more dotting. Now, as I am like working in the nose area, I am also looking at the fur that's right above the nose and making sure that my lines aren't super smooth. A lion isn't smooth, he's furry, so I want to make sure that that texture is kind of recognized. So I'm kind of like chop into the nose a little bit, almost like in a zigzag pattern with my dots to make sure that that texture can stand out. So I'm going to go back to my nostril where I said I was going to start and kind of finish off that darkest area. I promise you I won't keep you on this tutorial for the entire length of me doing this project. But I wanted to get you a good start so that you understand kind of how to approach some of these different areas. So again, I'm up against that. I'm in the right corner now, right here, and I want to make sure that I keep that white area white. Well, it's not really white, it's more like a light gray, and then this darker area dark. So I want to make sure that I go in and get that line all in there. And my angle was a little off when I drew with pencil, so I am going to kind of check my work as I go as well. But here's kind of my first fade. So I'm going to kind of finish out where it's darker, and then it kind of fades to a dark gray versus that black. As we curve back to the nostril. And I know it doesn't seem like I've done very much yet, but the magic of the internet and video recording is I am going to pause and speed up the recording and then come back. Okay, so I've gotten a lot of the nostril done, and I'm working on kind of bringing in this dark value from the mouth area because it's going to be pretty dark in here. And you're not going to be able to get every single gray value in there. But the idea is we've got to match texture and we've got to get close to what's depicted in the photo so that when you back away from your stippling work, you're able to see some great resemblance to the original photo. And so I zoomed in so that you could see it kind of proportionate to where I am on, my photographed version or copy or whatever we want to call it, example. So then again, I'm just bringing in those dark values. So I want to do all the dark values on my project. I don't want to just start in the muzzle and work out. I would want to finish my nostril area down here, and then I would want to work on getting into probably the eye area. So, moving over into this region in here and getting all of those like kind of fur marks in the dark. And that's what I would want to focus on as I kind of work my way into the lighter areas, the more detailed areas. What I will say is be careful with the whiskers. Sorry, the word escaped me for a second. So if you notice, whiskers are white, right? And they're on that darker backdrop. So it is going to be really important for you almost to like outline where the whisker is. So using your pencil marking to kind of leave that there until you go to erase. But I'm almost making like a dotted outline around my whiskers so that when I go and fill in that darker fur area in that background, I'll be good and my whiskers will then pop when it's all done. Do not dot the whiskers. If they're white, they should be white, so you don't want to dot them with the black. Another common mistake is taking your pen and just dotting everything as an outline, as if you were like going to take a Sharpie marker and like literally like trace the outline of your animal. It won't look photorealistic then. All we'll see is that harsh outline. So really, really, really try not to do that. You want to focus on those dark areas and let the light areas kind of come to life because of the lack of dots there, right? That's kind of the whole concept. So I'm going to continue to dot. I'm going to switch over to a sped up version mode, and I will post that later for you guys so you can see my finished product, but I'm not going to cheat. I'm not going to show it to you right away. It will take me some time. So I'm going to take a little break and I'll come back to it. Hopefully this gets you started and you are feeling confident and ready to go. And I wish you good luck. Email me if you have any questions.